here from Rain Country. God is good all the time, and I'm here today to talk a little bit about fermenting onions. A couple of things I do like to have on hand fermented and ready to go is fermented garlic and fermented onions. Now, I've done old videos on fermenting garlic, and the process would be pretty much the same as I'm doing here. And I'm going to explain and show you how here in just a minute, but I want to first explain, even if you're not one to eat a lot of fermented foods, what would be the benefit of having fermented onions and garlic on hand? Well, for me, though, I use a lot of dried onions and dried garlic in so many things. There are times where it is really nice to have a more fresh version of these things. Let's say, for example, for the onions, if you're making tacos, really like having raw onions on my tacos. Maybe there's onions in the sauce that I'm putting in there, but I still like to have raw onions on the top. So if you've got a lot of onions either coming in from your garden or you bought a lot like I recently did and I wasn't going through them fast enough from Misfits Market, I get the organic red onions, and I realized, man, I'm not working through these fast enough. I better put some up. I could dehydrate a bunch more if I want, but I want to keep a bunch of them raw for when I want them like that, or adding to chili, another thing I like putting raw onions on. So that is where your fermented onions can be really handy, because they're going to last pretty much forever. It only takes about 3 days for them to ferment. Then you store them in your fridge and they can last. I've had onions and garlic fermented like that in there for over a year and have it still be good. And so that's a nice way to do it. You don't have to worry about it spoiling and rotting away in your vegetable drawer, but you can keep it fermented. It's chopped up and ready to go. So all I do, it's just really simple. Well, first thing let me explain is I do use a fermentation starter for such things. While in a lot of cases it's not necessary, to me it's just a way to ensure I'm going to get a good ferment, and I don't have to worry about using a ton of salt when fermenting vegetables. So I have a video, a more recent one I did on the fermentation starter and how to make it. Super easy to do. You can make it out of anything. This one was made from dried, homegrown, organic blackberries. And the reason I picked this one was just because the color matched the red onions. That's the only reason why. I also have a dandelion one, a rhubarb one, and something else. I can't remember. I think it's orange peel. That is optional, but this is just the way I do it. And like I said, I don't have to use as much salt. I can just add salt according to taste. So the first step when it comes to onions, this is one way that really helps reduce the fumes so it doesn't burn your eyes. I only do this if I'm cutting up a lot of onions. If I'm just cutting up a few, I don't bother. But if I'm cutting up a bunch, like I'm dehydrating a bunch, then I have this big candle that it's got 4 wicks. You could do the same idea with several candles. I just grab that one and I bring it in here and I light all 4 of the wicks, and then I let that burn as close to my work area as possible, because the flames on the candles are going to help burn off those fumes to help prevent burning their eyes. Now, I know there's all other methods that people swear by. Good ventilation also helps. The candle does help. It's not 100% foolproof, but it helps immensely. So I light that first before I start chopping into my onions. Now, with your onions, any of that papery outside part, just take that off, save it, and you can dehydrate it and then powder it and mix it in and use it as you would any other onion powder. So that's what I started doing with that, instead of just tossing it or trying to remember to save it to make a broth with, because that's what a lot of other people do, is they'll just use it for a broth. I always forget about that, but this way I just throw it on my wood stove dehydrator, or if I've got things in the dehydrator already, I'll put that in there and then dry it up and then powder it. I either use my coffee grinder that's dedicated for food use only, or I'll use my blender if I'm doing a whole bunch and just powder it up the best I can. And in this case, I already have some white onion powder, organic, that I've purchased, and I just mix it all in together. So add some nice color to it too when you're doing the red onions. So yeah, don't throw out those onion skins. I just start putting the onions, the chopped onions, into the jar, and maybe when I get about halfway full, I then add about a teaspoon or so of salt. That's going to be all up to you if you want to add any at all. When you're using, again, if you're using a fermentation starter, salt is not necessary. At this point, it's only used for flavoring, but I do go ahead and add some. And salt is a natural preservative anyway. And then I go ahead and top my jar off with the onions, and then I pour in 1/4 cup of my liquid starter. So I strain out whatever's in there, and then I put in 1/4 cup to a quart jar. If I'm making a 1/2 gallon jar, I'm going to put in a 1/2 cup of the starter. Then I top it off with my filtered rainwater. And the reason we use the filtered rainwater is I don't have to worry about the chlorine or any of the chemicals that are in there. And it's something we do collect and filter our own rainwater. And when it comes to consuming any kind of liquid, that's what we use. So we use our filtered rainwater. No worries about chemicals, no worries about chlorine or chloramine possibly killing off your ferment or preventing it from fermenting. Then I put an airtight lid on it, and I just kind of shake it like this back and forth, making sure the salt and the starter are all blended in well. And then I just set it on my counter and let it ferment for a few days. Now I don't, you can use like the pickling pipes or whatever. I just don't bother with that. But if I need to, I just simply come and loosen the lid just a little bit, enough to add, release the pressure and allow the gases to escape so it doesn't start to leak all over the place or blow your lid off. Now in this case, what I have is just a plastic lid. You can use a regular metal canning lids with bands, but I also make sure there's a silicone ring in there that's going to prevent leakage. And I do like to keep the lid on kind of snug while it's fermenting and just burp it. But you can also do it, just loosen it a little bit like that and then just leave it. It's going to prevent stuff from getting in there, but it will still allow your gases to escape. 3 days on the counter once it's good and bubbly. This has been a day. I just started it yesterday morning. Then once it's really bubbly, 3 to 4 days, maybe 5 days. It's all going to depend on the temperature of your house and all that. So remember, you're dealing with living things. And while there's a basic, it's just like a woman who's going to have a baby, 40 weeks is a standard. But that baby could be born at 36 weeks or 42 weeks. Every living thing is going to be a little bit different. So yeah, don't worry if it's not very fizzy by the 3rd day. Give it a couple more days. It'll be fine. And then once it's good and bubbly, well, this smells really good. Once it's good and bubbly, you can go ahead and store it in your fridge. So since I just started this, I can't show you what it looks like all fizzy. I'll go ahead and put a clip here of what it looks like once it's ready to go into storage in the refrigerator. Now you can also keep, by the way, you can keep your fermented goods in any other type of cold storage. So if you have a root cellar or something like that, but cold storage is going to be best because it's going to kind of slow down the process. It's going to help keep it from bubbling over and making a mess all over everything. And so that's why keeping it cold is a good idea. And anyway, you can see I do still keep, whenever I'm fermenting anything, I put it on one of my crocheted coaster things here, and that helps to collect any moisture that might come out so it's not running out all over the counter. It doesn't happen very often, but it does happen sometimes. So, and by the way, if you'd like to learn how to make these as well, I do have a video on these that I'll link to down below. It's my own pattern. So anyway, yeah, and then you can just use it in whatever. You can toss them into soups. And one thing I do want to add, that whenever you're fermenting garlic or onion, it does tend to mellow out that strong pungent flavor that your stronger onions and garlic tend to have. So if you like that really strong flavor, that might not be the best thing. You might not prefer that, but I just want to let you know up front, it does tend to mellow out the heat that's in those things. So whenever you're doing onions or garlic, and you do want to ferment them, I'd say go for the hottest ones you can. Like elephant garlic tends to be more mild. You want to go with the hot garlic, hot onions. I find that red onions seem to be fairly hot, and so are white onions. But some of your yellow onions are definitely more mellow. So anyway, that's it. Pretty simple. If you'd like more information on fermenting, I'll link to the full fermenting playlist down below, as well as a link directly to the fermentation starter. And I hope you enjoyed this video, and share with me your thoughts, ideas, if you've done anything like this before and how do you use it in the comments down below. And thanks for watching. Take care and God bless.